Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Radis, and I'm here in London. And we have as our guest today, Kevin Perlmutter, who is the CEO, founder, and chief strategist of Limbic Brand Evolution. Now, we'll explain to you what that is in a minute, but first, a little housekeeping. I want to thank the Global Entrepreneur Network and Gen UK for having us. This is the second time I've had a chance to work with this group, and I can tell you it's been really an amazing experience every time I've had any connection and engagement with the folks at Gen UK and the Global Entertainment Network. So I spent some time with a lot of you in Bahrain last year. So happy to be here and excited to have Kevin Perlmutter here, who I'm gonna start off, Kevin, before I ask you a little bit about yourself, to explain something to me.
Go for it,
You
Frank.
say brands should exist to make people's lives better. This is a quote. The most important question for any brand leader is, how do you want people to feel? Why is that so important?
It's incredibly important, and it's what you've just quoted back to me is the foundation of how I think and how I operate as a brand strategist with Limbic Brand Evolution. Brands should exist to make people's lives better because people aren't walking around looking for brands. People are walking around to have a better life. And if they could find a brand or an experience that makes their life better, that solves an unmet need, that solves a challenge that they're having, or just improves their day-to-day, then they're going to have a stronger connection with that brand. And the reason why it's so important for brands to focus on how you want people to feel is because how people feel about the experiences they have with your brand, the emotions that they walk away with, have the largest impact on their loyalty and their desire to continue that relationship with your brand. If they have a bad experience, there's a lot of evidence out there that they're going to walk away and possibly never come back. If they have a great experience, they're going to tell people, and they're going to come back some more.
So that kind of leads me to the question of whether or not a name of a company, which is often associated with a brand, if it's important that the name express emotion, or because I have a sense that sometimes people don't remember the name, but remember the product or the service or what it does. How do you connect your brand as an engaging thing to people through its name and through the image that you create for it?
It's such a great question, Frank, and we could probably do a whole hour just on how you name brands. There are many ways that you name brands and products. There are ranges from whether those names are descriptive, which is they're using common language to share something that instantly reminds you of what that brand is all about, or brand names can be abstract. So a brand name that has no meaning in the world, it's a cobbled together name and needs to create meaning over time and could be more emotive, but requires a greater description. Or there are combinations of names that come together so that you can bring words together, like Airbnb is actually an example of a name that's pretty abstract, but it's got some descriptive elements because it has that B&B, that sort of aspect to it that reminds you of like a bed and breakfast or something like that. The name of my company is a combination of both abstract and descriptive. Limbic Brand Evolution is somewhat abstract because not many people understand what limbic means or what the limbic system in our brain does. The limbic system in our brain controls emotion, motivation, behavior, and memory. So for people who don't know what limbic is, it's an abstract name. It's a word. Lim says flexible. Bic says strong. So it's a strong, flexible brand evolution consultancy, if you read into it in that way. But if you understand what the limbic system of our brain does, then you start to recognize that the name I've selected for my company is rooted in what my company is all about, which is creating stronger emotional connections between brands and people.
So I did not have to ask you that question because you took us right there, which is really good. Interesting that you started out your life, your career, your professional life as an employee of or a someone who worked for other people.
Yes.
When we first met, you were the chief strategist of a sound design firm in New York called Man Made Music. And at some point in your time working there, which you had been for quite some time, made the decision that you wanted to stretch your legs and move on and start your own business, doing what you did using your theories and your understanding of the way marketing and strategy work together as an entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about how the idea for Limbic system came to for Limbic brand evolution came to be, and how did you make that transition from being an employee to going out and doing a startup and doing what all entrepreneurs do, and also tell me, which you kind of have already, but I want to know how it impacted your thought process as you moved into it. What is the USP of Limbic?
Yep. So many great questions there. You're right. I worked for other people, for other companies for over 25 years. I started my career in advertising. I worked for 3 agencies. I considered that to be phase 1 of my career, where I was working in agency account management and learning the ropes of leading global brand relationships for very large brands. Stage 2 of my career was moving to Interbrand, a global brand consultancy, where I became a senior level brand strategist leading very large client relationships. I also became very proficient in understanding customer experience. I launched Interbrand's first ever global customer experience practice, which is exactly where I wanted to be at that stage of my career, moving from advertising, which was all about making promises, to customer experience, which is actually about delivering on those promises and creating the kinds of experiences that people want to come back to. After 7 years there, I had a great opportunity that you referenced to join Man Made Music as chief strategist and ultimately chief innovation officer. And my job there was always described as, Kevin is here to help us do things we've never done before, which was a fantastic job description and very much in keeping with me as a person and my ethic around progressively moving things forward, evolving things based on the situation at hand and looking for opportunities. I like the autonomy of the position. It also helped me learn how to evolve a business, a medium-sized business. It helped me learn about emotion, the power of sound and the power of emotion. And one of the things that I did there was I created a research capability that's rooted in neuroscience and helped to understand people's subconscious. So that allowed me to really get deep into understanding behavioral science. And I started to think about it after 4.5 years there. I started to think, I've built up this combination of desires and skills. I'm motivated by the autonomy of this role. I'm motivated by creating and building things, doing things never done before, being on the edge of a frontier. I've also learned a lot about brand strategy, customer experience, behavioral science, and the power of emotion that is so often ignored or under-leveraged by most brands and business leaders. And I started to think, well, this is an opportunity for me to go out on my own and bring all of these things together, to have a company that is unique in this space, exclusively focused on activating brands through strategic foundations that are rooted in emotional insights. And the USP, the unique selling proposition of my company, is that I'm turning emotional insights into a competitive advantage because they are so powerful that they enable brands to connect in stronger ways, and grow more profitably.
So I understand and can see, not just viscerally, the connection between emotion and music and sound design. I can, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
But you have come up with a methodology to basically say, or to say, that emotion is the largest driver of brand loyalty. So this is something, it seems to me, that would be a good lesson for an entrepreneur to understand. And in fact, that emotion creating great brand loyalty kind of supersedes or makes a highly satisfied customer a fully connected and more satisfied customer. There's a quote from the Harvard Business School on your a Harvard Business Review on your website that discusses that. And you have some graphics to show a little bit about how that process, that thought process, works. And if you want to drop one of those in at any time, feel free to. But tell me a little bit about your idea of focus, connect, and evolve. How does that work as for an entrepreneur? How would they use your philosophy to market themselves, to create what it is that their business is? I mean, that's, I'm going to jump back a second. Where do they start when they've got, okay, I've got a job, I'm getting out of my job, I'm going to go start a business, I'm going to create a product, I'm going to sell this product, I'm going to name this product. Where does this idea of creating the emotional connection between the entrepreneur, the product and or service, and the public or the client, where does that emotional connection begin?
Well, I think it's most important to just take half a step back and point out some of the statistics that you quoted, and then I'll go into the other areas that you asked me to comment on. So it is true. There is lots of research out there, a lot of it from Forrester, year over year over year, and other customer experience and business consultancies saying that emotion is the largest driver of loyalty for brands. How a brand makes people feel is the largest predictor of whether or not they're going to stay, come back, or abandon. That's been proven over
regardless
and over again.
of what kind of brand it is, regardless of whether it's a brand, a product, or a service, correct?
Those studies are global studies that have been conducted across 15, 18, 20, I don't remember the number, industries. So it is a consistent finding across industries. The other study that you referenced from the Harvard Business Review says that people who are fully connected to a brand, and by that they mean emotionally, are 53% more valuable to that brand, to that business, than people who are just highly satisfied. And for so many years, brands and businesses would look at customer satisfaction rates. And for all those times, they were really missing the point. They were really missing the higher bar. So the reason why an emotionally connected customer is more valuable to a business is because they shop with you more often. They recommend you to their friends. They understand why they love being a part of that brand experience. And every once in a while, if something doesn't go perfectly according to plan, they're more forgiving and they'll keep coming back. So those are incredibly important facts. On the other side of that, people who have a poor or frustrating or impersonal experience with a brand or business there's a 40%, so 47% of them are probably going to drop off and leave that experience and may not return. So the importance of creating that emotional connection is there. And the way I approach the work, the way I founded my own company, the way I put this approach onto myself is I needed to focus, connect, and figure out what the evolution of that is over time. So focus, when I'm working with a client or creating my own unique selling proposition, I'm thinking about focus. What is it that I am uniquely, or what is it that my client is uniquely in the world to do to make people's lives better? What is the unique and differentiating aspect of my business, my value proposition? What is it that I care about the most? Why am I motivated to do this? as an entrepreneur, a friend of mine told me this thing that I remember, and I think it's really funny. He says, as an entrepreneur, you can work 50% of your time. You just have to decide if that's days or evenings. You're putting all of your heart and soul into this business. You are constantly focused on your business and working. And it's important to be motivated by what it is that your business is all about. And if you're motivated by it and there's enthusiasm about it, that enthusiasm is going to spread to other people. So I'm helping people focus. I'm also helping them connect, because if you want people to connect, you need to serve their needs. So by connecting, when connecting well, you're uncovering emotional insights about their needs, about their desires, about their unmet needs, about the things that they need and want and desire in life that you could potentially help them solve. So when I'm creating foundational strategy for brands, I'm helping them focus and I'm helping them connect. And then thirdly, I'm helping them evolve. We're applying that foundational strategy to how they communicate, the products and services that they offer, to the experiences that they create for their customers, and generally how they evolve as a brand. So I'm going to put that chart on the screen that you were asking about, unless you wanted to jump in with a question.
No, well, you can put it up because I'm going to actually talk. We can talk about it over the chart. For
Okay,
a second.
excellent.
So there was a couple of things that you said there that ticked me a little bit, that pushed me. One of them is enthusiasm. Is that an emotion?
I think if enthusiasm is evidence of an emotion. Definitely, there's, when you're motivated, when you're enthusiastic about something, that's an emotional response in your body to your surroundings, to the experience you're having.
So you also talked about the messaging.
Yes.
Where does the emotional aspect come in? Does it come in the creation of the product or service? Does it come in the marketing of the product or service through the messaging? Is it something that has to be tied throughout the entire sort of ecosystem of the product or service? And you talk about how your system takes the complexity out of typical brand strategy.
Yes.
I know as a brand guy that it was really complex. All of what we did was really complex, and often, as certainly as I've developed as outside of being a brand, an employee controlling a brand, that it didn't need to be that complex, and I didn't have the opportunity to understand how to simplify that marketing approach, to make it less complex and to take advantage of emotion. How do you say to an entrepreneur, this is where this begins in your thought process?
Yeah, I'm going to put this thing up and share it with you and explain it. So oops, that was the wrong one. Hold on. My business is rooted around this idea. And my strategic approach is rooted around this idea that I'm helping my clients create limbic sparks. The limbic sparks brand strategy approach is rooted in this idea that limbic sparks happen when your audience is emotionally motivated by what you're all about. So as I talked about, if we can help a brand focus, express what's emotionally motivating to that business, what they're in the world to do to make people's lives better, and we can untap insights around their audiences, the people that they want to reach, what those people need and desire in their lives, regardless of your brand. And you can find that intersection of emotional motivation between what you're all about and what they need and desire, then they're going to be excited by what you have to offer. And the statistics that we talked about demonstrate that they're going to keep coming back for more and be fulfilled by that opportunity. So the way I'm taking complexity out of brand strategy is by focusing my approach on understanding what the brand is all about, understanding what customers need and want, and then creating a foundational strategy for how the brand comes to life across communications. You were asking about different aspects of how a brand comes to life, the communications, the products and services. My primary role up front with a client, and the advice that I would give to any entrepreneur looking to start a business or grow their business, is that you need to figure out what it is that you're doing that's going to be exciting to people, and create a strategy around that unique idea. And that strategy then informs how you present yourself as a brand, the way you speak, the way your customer experiences are designed, the products and services that you offer and focus on to meet the needs of the people that you're trying to reach. This is all about taking emotional insights and turning them into a strategy and activation plan that will create more gravitas around your business. Let me give you an example. This is something that I just read in a Forbes magazine this past week. And the article was titled, "How Airbnb Survived the Pandemic." Think about Airbnb. This is a business predicated on travel, and they've survived through massive challenges. When I say survived, and when the article says survived, it doesn't mean that they're the same company that they were a year ago. They've dealt with significant reductions in cost, significant reductions in staff. They've focused on the core business. They focused on helping their employees have the best possible situation throughout this pandemic. But what they did to survive and not go away as a brand was they looked deep into the emotional needs and desires of people directly as a result of this pandemic. And they found two things that they centered around and promoted to help people continue to use their brand despite all that's going on in the world. One is they recognize that people knew that the situation we're living in is very fluid and changing all of the time, and they were concerned about making commitments to go places. So what they did is they instituted a no questions asked money back guarantee right up to the point where you leave for your trip. And that gave people confidence that they could book and cancel at the last minute. The other thing that they did was they recognized that people were concerned about the cleanliness of the health aspects of being in someone else's rented flat. So what they did was they instituted a public awareness around a cleanliness policy, a checklist of sorts that all of the renters needed to abide by in order to rent their homes, so that it was clear that they were taking the cleanliness, the purification of these spaces seriously before strangers entered in and put their potentially, worried about putting their health at risk. So this is a very clear example of how you take emotional insights and activate a brand through communications and offerings and services to make sure that you're adapting to the needs that people have. I'm going to show one more slide, and then I'll probably take that off the screen.
While you do that, I just want to jump in and say that I heard that as an individual listening to other marketers to get their message out there. I heard that message about Airbnb, and quite honestly, came away from it and had conversations with people about it, feeling that, boy, Airbnb has done something that the big hotel chains aren't doing. They actually made me feel that if I were to go somewhere and need a place to stay, that I might choose an Airbnb instead of a big hotel, which I generally would do, because of that message.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yes.
Anyway, that's just
that is it's I'm glad you added that, because that is how powerful it is to tap into the emotions that people have. And right now, I mean, we're living in an environment that's fluid. I've been referring to it as the new now. And the new now is all about adapting to the environment that you're in to best understand.
I was going to ask you,
yeah,
how has COVID changed your strategy and your approach to this?
Well, something, it's really interesting because I started this business in mid 2019. Within a year, there was a global pandemic. I'm focused on emotion and emotional insights, and the message that I'm focused on has become more relevant and important than ever before, because people's emotions are in a state of flux, and it's causing all sorts of changes in consumer behavior, and brands are scrambling. And I want to come back to that point and go deeper on that. But before I do, I want to show this one slide.
Okay.
And that is this. The way to strengthen customer relationships is to understand people's needs, desires, frustrations, understand how you want them to feel, and then determine what your brand should say or do to make people's lives better. This is exactly what Airbnb has done. This is what I've been counseling my clients to do. This is what any business owner, brand leader, entrepreneur should be thinking about right now. The status quo, how a brand has been surviving and growing in the past, may or may not be as relevant as it used to be going forward, primarily because of the massive changes in our lifestyles, the massive changes in our emotional states of mind, and what we prioritize as being most important. So let me share a little story. There's a coffee shop about 5-minute walk from my house where I used to spend a lot of my time, about 2-3 hours a day in the afternoon. I'd break up the day by going there for a cup of coffee and to get some work done. And I actually created a lot of what Limbic brand evolution is about, sitting in that coffee shop. I have a great passion for being there. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they closed down a bit for a while. And as the spring came about and the summer came about, they started to come back. They opened their doors. There was nobody inside the store, but they were selling coffee from a cart right in front of the door. And I was excited. I was like, oh, they're back. Let me go back there. Let me grab a cup. And as I walked over, I noticed that the people that they hired to sell coffee in front of the store were not very busy at this moment. They were talking to their friends, and they weren't wearing masks. They were wearing masks around their chins, like they took them down to have this conversation. Meanwhile, they're breathing all over the coffee cups that they're about to use to serve customers. And I ran for the hills. I went home. I was like, I've been making coffee for 4 months. I'll be fine. My emotional state of mind and my instincts that they were not promoting a healthy environment for something that I wanted to buy from them caused me to walk away. Unfortunately, it wasn't an anomaly. I went back again and a third time over the next couple of weeks, and I noticed that they simply were not enforcing a policy of wearing masks among their employees. And what was originally like a one-time event has now become a situation where this coffee shop, regardless of when they reopen, it's probably not going to be a place I go anymore. And it's unfortunate because I enjoyed my time there.
Well, interesting that you took clearly a mandate on the part of the local government. I'm assuming this was in New York.
It's in New Jersey, suburb.
Okay, New for most
Same
people
same
around
thing
the
for you
world,
guys.
New York is New Jersey, but it's, we know it's not. That it was, that it became much more than just a health issue and a mandate by the government, but it became something, an emotional thing for you, and it changed the way that you thought and processed your feelings about that store and what it had meant to you in the evolution of Limbic.
Yep.
Let me I'm not going to put on the brakes, but I need to go into an area. We don't have a whole lot of time left. I do want to let some people ask some questions. I would like to know how you would approach going into an entrepreneur's office area and say, here's how I will help you to understand how this can be of great service to you and your needs as an entrepreneur, as a business person. How do you physically go in and start this conversation and then train their people? What do I get if I hire Limbic? Besides you, which is pretty good. I'd be, by the way, I'd be happy just to have you. but what do I get? Obviously, your thought process and your approach, but how do I take advantage of that?
Yeah, so it comes back to focus, connect, and evolve. And the way I start the process is with a very inquisitive approach. I spend time with the business owners or the brand leaders or the executive team, and I work with them to truly understand what it is that they would like to solve for in their business, what it is that makes them unique and desirable, and how it is that we can bring their story and their brand to life and all that makes it wonderful in a way that other people are going to be motivated by that. The second thing I do is I work to understand more about their customer base, whether through conversations, existing research, desktop research, primary research. I want to understand what makes their customers tick. I want to understand what their needs and desires are and what it is that they're looking for to get through life in a better way that this brand can serve. And then what I'm finding is what I call the limbic sparks insight, the shared emotional motivation between the audience and the brand owner. And from there, we create a unique selling proposition, a positioning statement, or a strap line that helps to articulate what makes that brand distinct. And those elements start to form the foundation of the brand strategy. I'll also look at personality traits or brand attributes. We'll create some guidelines for how the brand communicates. What are the elements of that brand's story that we need to consistently reinforce in the way it presents itself? This becomes the foundational brand strategy. And from there, we start applying those things to communications, to websites, to sales sheets, to the way they create products and services going forward, or even describe those products and services. And these are all things that we can help them do to put themselves out there in a way that's going to be more connective to the people that they want to reach. I'll give you an example. I was working with an entrepreneur recently who runs an environmental energy efficiency consultancy in New York City. His job, put more plainly, is to get buildings to hire him to do an energy efficiency audit and then convert those audits into contracts to upgrade buildings to increase their energy efficiency, whether that's a new boiler or new LED lights or other measures that they can take. In the first part of the job, the work is not so hard to sell because New York City either requires or subsidizes the cost of the audit. Where he was having a challenge in his business was converting those audits into upgrade proposals and contracts that he can follow on. So what we did was, first of all, we focused on him, his business, his partners, why he exists, and the environmental expertise and passion he has for creating more energy efficient building infrastructures. The second thing we did was we looked into a lot of research. There's a lot of research online, decade of research on the emotional drivers that push people to make energy efficient decisions and investments. There's a lot of studies out there on what motivates people and what does not motivate people to make these decisions. I'll give you one example. If you say to people, you should change your furnace because you will ultimately save money, they're like, maybe. You should change your furnace because it's good for the environment. Maybe. If you should change your furnace because your neighbor's building has a better furnace and is saving more money than you. Oh, really? Social conformity bias plays a role here. You know, if my neighbor is doing something, then I should do it too. That is the single biggest driver of getting people to do energy efficient things in their home or their office building. So there are many things that we looked at. And just to finish this case for a second, Frank, and then I want you to ask your next question, is we looked at a lot of different research studies, and there are a lot of different practices that can be applied from a cognitive bias perspective or an emotional insights perspective. And we altered the way he presents his brand, the way he presents his proposals, and the way he encourages people through better means of communication to make those proposals more compelling and instinctively get people to want to take advantage of what he's recommending.
So I guess you can imagine what my next question is. Did it work?
The work was actually finished about 2 months ago, and he's applying all of those things to his website now, to the company sales materials, to his proposals. I can tell you that he has been thrilled by the work we've done together, and he is applying those things to the conversations he's having, and he's let me know that it's created more opportunity for him in the short few weeks since we've done the work than he was having before in similar situations.
So you actually took us into what I was going to ask you about. Give me a couple of examples of clients that you've worked with. So I'm going to ask you to give us another one, but I want to put in between that that you've posited basically that the ROI is not necessarily the return on investment isn't necessarily immediately money, but that the return on investment is that you've created a situation for the entrepreneur where they feel more comfortable in presenting their message and their business to the consumer.
Yeah, I think the
is that
ROI,
right?
it is partially right. The ROI it's about giving them more comfort, certainly. And it's about them being motivated and excited about the story that they're telling and the things that they can do, and saying it in ways that are going to tap into what people care most about. The ROI is there if they do this, because everyone is putting out communications. Everyone is putting out proposals. Everyone is creating experiences. Everyone is creating products and services that they want people to buy. If you do it from the foundation of tapping into emotional insights, the data is there that you will be more successful. And you need to invest in this first phase of work to understand the new strategic platform that you launch off of. But once you have it, all the things you're doing are going to be improved with that foundation. You're not doing new things after that. You're just doing the things you used to do with a better foundation and a way to express it.
So two questions.
Yes.
One, give us another example. And two,
Sure.
Tell me how you acquire a client.
So I'll start with the acquire. I have been connecting with my network, the people that I've been in touch with and that I've known.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that all of the things you're going to tell me about acquisition would be applicable to an entrepreneur.
I would think so.
Okay.
We all know that most opportunities, whether it's job searches or sales or things like that, are I'm making up a number, 80+% a result of recommendations and referrals versus I'm not someone in my business who is relied on or is delving into cold calling or spammy lead gen. I'm working very hard to connect with people that I've known. I'm also putting a lot of articles and doing conferences and podcasts, and I'm putting my thoughts out there in a way that people could connect with, and that's creating some gravitation toward me, and people are connecting with me based on what they hear me saying. And I've also, through COVID, I've been connecting with people through online networking groups, which has been a phenomenal way to meet people and has completely expanded my network in the last 6 months in ways that I never could have imagined, versus not having the opportunities to be part of these communities. So that's how
I want to say, by the way, before we wrap up here today, I'm going to ask you about how people can get in touch with you, because I would encourage the folks at Gen UK and those folks around the Global Entrepreneurs Network, not only to come back and look at this video on YouTube when it's posted, but also to make an effort to reach out to you to talk about this, because this isn't something that you hear as a marketer It's not something that you hear all the time. And this is a concerted, strategic, developed approach to utilizing emotion as a tool to help extend the brand, and in the end, to increase the reach. And emotion also has, the key words to me in marketing are reach and frequency. I
Mhm.
think you've added this new level of it. It's emotional reach and frequency. So
Yeah.
get a lot of people to feel a certain way about something and do it a lot and do it all the time, and make sure that it becomes part of somebody's sort of inherent understanding of what the product or service is. But
Yeah.
we'll get to that at the end. It just struck me that that was something that I thought needed to be said.
Thank you. You're so right. And bringing emotional insights into the way you strategically design and activate your brand and business is something that needs to be done consistently. And for me, it's become muscle memory. It's the way I approach strategy, and it's a more efficient way of approaching strategy than what I've experienced in the past. One
Well,
client
do you have to
example.
teach that though? Do you have to teach that to your clients? Or do you think that they understand that simply because they've come to you?
Whoa, a lot of questions in there. That's great. I'm selling a category, I believe, which is one of the challenges. I'm selling I'm encouraging people to focus on developing strategy so that they can activate their brand in this way more effectively. And not everyone either understands it off the bat or has a healthy respect for creating the right strategic foundation before they move into designing communications and websites and other things that they need to do. The clients that I've worked with have been incredibly thankful that they spent a little time with me before jumping into those activations, because it made the activations of their brand much more engaging and potentially successful. So I am
So
selling a
I
category to
gotta,
achieve
I'm
that.
gonna interrupt again.
Go ahead.
So do you find that many young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are getting into it for the first time are more tactical than they are strategic?
Well, I'm in an interesting situation because I'm both a brand strategist with this perspective and an entrepreneur. So I don't think most entrepreneurs have 20 plus years of helping brands evolve under their belt. And for me, that's the blessing and the curse, right? So I was able to create my company. I was able to create my brand, my brand name, bring in a designer, created my brand identity, my website. I was able to do all that rather quickly. And as a perpetual evolver, I'm constantly tweaking and refining and improving it based on the insights that I gather and the feedback that I get. That's also the curse, because as someone who's so steeped in this, I know enough to drive myself nuts with it on occasion. But I think for entrepreneurs out there who are not brand strategists, I think someone like me can help them get off the ground very quickly with the insights that they need to be more successful because of the experience that I have and the perspective that I bring.
Let's have one last example
Sure.
of how you've helped a client before we open it up to those people out there who might have a question or two to ask, and then wrap up with how they can reach out to you. So
Wonderful.
give us another example of a client that you've helped and how it worked for them.
So I help clients of many different sizes and scales and industries. The client example that I shared before is a small business owner, an entrepreneur. The client example that I'll share now is a large nonprofit. The AT&T Performing Arts Center is a large nonprofit in the city of Dallas, Texas. And they are an organization that is, they have 5 venues. They bring in performances from all over the world. They serve the local community as a nonprofit that's responsible for helping the community have access to arts and education programs. So when I encountered them, they brought me on because they weren't feeling like they were creating broad enough appeal within the community and feeling a bit misunderstood. And one of the things that I did the whole Limbic Sparks process with them, the whole strategy approach where I understood the motivations of the brand and the people who run the brand, as well as the people who they're trying to reach in the city of Dallas. And we landed on the understanding that they were communicating a little bit too much about themselves and transitioned their communication to being for the people that they wanted to reach. So we went from about us to for you. Their tagline, which is the sort of basis of their strategy and the way they communicated when I encountered them, was staging the amazing, which is a wonderful tagline. And it was all about how amazing their campuses, their buildings are, the performances are. But it took them down a path of talking about themselves and how amazing they were. And it was limiting for them because there were people in the city who didn't know enough about them, that didn't feel emotionally connected to them. Maybe they didn't even feel like they could be part of an organization that was so amazing because they were from parts of the city that were a bit underserved and they don't have exposure to the arts, or maybe they didn't have the right shoes to walk into the building. But the idea was that the people in this organization that I got to know and spent time with have an incredible passion for all types of arts and for putting on performances and helping people in the community engage with the arts and learn more, and bringing arts to the school districts that don't have arts and education programs, and helping people find new careers and opportunities. So with all the work that we did, we transitioned their tagline, their positioning, their mission, their communications from the idea of staging the amazing to AT&T Performing Arts Center, yours to discover. And everything we do now is about discovery, inviting discovery, letting people know of the emotional benefits that they can get by joining, by attending performances, that they can be more of themselves. They could find new opportunities for their career and their hobbies. They can enjoy memorable moments with family and friends. They can discover, this actually leads to potential loyalty programs and programs where you can discover things that they offer around the campus all year long, and continually be encouraged to and desire new discoveries as you go. It also leads to how they, last point, it also leads to how they inspire donations and corporate sponsorships by intrinsically motivating people to want to be a part of helping the community discover arts and entertainment. So this is a great example of how we transitioned from about us to for you and tapped into the emotional needs and desires of the people that they were trying to reach.
So that sounds brilliant. A couple of specific questions. First of all, which department in that organization did you interface with? Was it the marketing group, the sales group? I'm curious how that process worked out.
The answer is yes. I was brought in by the head of the marketing group, and I worked directly with her. And my the stakeholders that I worked with throughout the process were the heads of the other groups, community affairs, and other groups there. And we had a one-on-one direct relationship with the CEO of the organization, who reports into the board of directors. So effectively, it was me and the leadership team.
That's good. The other question that I had was about quantitative and qualitative analysis. Where does that fit in? Although the two are not necessarily very emotional, but you certainly can measure emotion using those types of analyses. Where does that fit into the limbic process, or is that something that the client has to do, or do you work with the client to create a situation where you'll end up getting those kind of analyses?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we can do a whole hour just on that one as well. I'm a big fan of research and insights, and I know that people's emotions are emanated from the subconscious level, and the way they behave is affected by those emotions. So there are many ways to capture understanding of emotional insights. You can gather those emotional insights through robust quantitative neuroscience-based research studies. You can gather those insights through looking at studies that have already been done, like I described for the environmental engineer consultancy. You can gather those insights through company data, and sometimes brands are far enough off the mark where you can just bring an emotion-oriented perspective to what they're already doing, and you have enough to work with to make a big impact. So I don't limit the work I do based on my ability to do primary research. I always appreciate having that extra information and a more robust foundation. But sometimes brands can be helped a long way just by someone who has an emotional insights perspective that they could bring to what they're already doing.
So bottom line is, it's about the consumer. It's about the people. That's who any entrepreneur needs to be targeting, correct?
Brands should exist to make people's lives better. And the most important question is, how do you want people to feel? That's where we started.
So that's a great place to end too. Kevin Perlmutter, CEO, brand strategist, the chief thinker at Limbic Brand Evolution. This has been a brilliant conversation. And as always, every single one of the things we discussed, we probably could have discussed for an hour without any problem at all. And I trust that we'll be doing this again, because I really enjoyed chatting with you about this. Tell those of us who are here now and those of us who will be listening to this later in the recording how to get a hold of you, please.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to speak with you on this topic. I'm so glad to be chatting with you and to be talking about this with everyone here. I can be found at limbicbrandevolution.com. That's LIMBIC brandevolution.com. My email address is kevin@limbicbrandevolution.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as Kevin Perlmutter. That's Kevin PERLMUTTER. I'm always happy to have a chat. There's information on my website. Every article I've written and podcast and conference I've been on is there. I'm a writer for brandingmag.com. There are a few articles there. And I'm always up for a conversation with anyone who wants to get to know me. Thank you.
And I would encourage everyone in the entrepreneur community to think seriously about how to engage emotion in your strategy and reach out to Kevin. Thank you all for listening. Thanks, Gen UK and the Global Entrepreneurs Network for this opportunity. Hope to see you again soon. And I'll see you again on Thursday, I hope. I'll be speaking with James Poulter, who is the CEO of a company called Vixen Labs, which is about voice and AI. Thanks a lot.